We're here at the Balboa Island Museum and Historical Society with Marcia Working. It's March 10, 2014. I'd like to ask you if you would please share why Balboa Island holds such a special place in your heart.
Please share. Oh my goodness, that would take forever and ever for me to tell. Because all of my life, the most special place in the world for me was to be at the beach in our precious little house at 309 Appolina. And I do remember that I used to cry when the summer would be over and we'd have to go back to Pasadena. I would cry all the way home. And then I would mark the calendar in September, counting down the days until next June when school would be out and I could go back to the beach. So this was the happiest place in the world for me, and still is.
What year did you start coming here as a family?
Well, I spent the first summer in my mother's tummy before I was born in a hole in the sand, because my mother was renting a house on Balboa Island, and her husband, my dad, dug a hole in the sand for me to perch in. So I became an island beachy person right away because I was so used to the warm sand before I was even born. So it's from birth on.
Do you have a favorite Balboa Island story that brings back fond memories of your childhood or even that inner child within you?
Well, I couldn't say one particular memory over so many. When I was young, playing in the water and with all the kids down the North Bayfront, we had a float at the North Bayfront, and the girls and I used to take a wooden matchstick and place it between our toes, and we'd jump off the float, and then we'd splash and splash until the water became all foamy, and then the match would pop up onto the surface, only you couldn't see it because of all the foam, and whoever could capture the match first would say, dibble dabble, dibble dabble. And so that was a game we always used to play, and all day long then we were in the water, on the sand, just having the best time ever.
You shared prior that this is a place that has multi-generational memories
Yes.
for you.
Yeah.
Would you share a little bit about how your family came to love this area?
Well, my great-grandmother, Blanche Babbitt, built the house in 1936. She lived in Pasadena, but a lot of Pasadena people had summer cottages at the beach, so she built the house in 1936. And believe it or not, she died in the house 3 years later of heat prostration. This is true, because they were having a horrible heat wave that year. And I think it was even hotter down here at the beach than it was in Pasadena. So here she built the house to get away from the heat. But that was just a fluky thing. But as a result then, her daughter, Blanche Kleckner, who was my grandmother, inherited the house. And so I got to spend most summers with my grandparents down here. And then when my grandparents passed away, then my mother and dad inherited the house, Marie and Emery Long. And then when they passed away, my brother and I inherited the house. So my brother still owns it and still resides in it. We used to never rent the house. Occasionally we will rent it now to select people. In fact, my brother has a nice group of ladies that are in their 70s, and they are childhood friends from all over the country, and they have a reunion every year where the ladies all meet, and they spend 2 weeks in the house, and they've been coming for 25 years in a row. And everybody on the street knows them, and they keep asking my brother, when are the ladies coming? That's what they call them, the ladies. And they just have a good old time. So my brother gives them special treatment because they enjoy it so much. From then on, of course, I have children now, and they have children, and the grandchildren have children. So our great-grandchildren now are the 7th generation of our family to be spending time in the house. So I think that's pretty unusual.
Absolutely.
Pretty unusual.
You shared also how the house has preserved a lot of its features. Would you share a little bit about those neat elements of retaining the coverage with the bright?
Yeah. The house was built on a concrete floor, not elevated, no foundation, just a concrete floor. In fact, all the pipes, the water pipes, and a lot of the electrical is probably underneath the foundation. So we have to be very careful of the plumbing, because we'd have to rip up the floors if we had to get to a really serious plumbing problem. But the house is knotty pine, single wall construction, only as a little beach cottage. It had no heat. It has a fireplace in the living room. And my grandmother used to light a fire every morning just to take the dampness out of the air. She'd burn the morning newspaper and a couple of things just to take the chillness off. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, and then they added another bedroom when my brother and I were born, but we had to walk through a bedroom in order to get to our bedroom, so it wasn't really the handiest. But it's cute and quaint, and it still looks the same way it did when it was built. Everybody has kept it as natural as they possibly could. My brother takes excellent care of the house, and he has improved. It's all in its original condition, but he's improved the original condition. He's added some cupboards in the kitchen. The water heater used to be above the broom closet. and we used to have to, when the water heater would wear out and we'd buy a new one, we'd have to have a hoist or a crane or something to lift it up. Well, he finally got rid of the water heater on top of the cupboard, and we now have a tankless water heater, finally. But for years and years, we didn't even have an indoor shower. We had to go outside the bathroom door to a shower that had a little, just right outside the bathroom door, and the shower curtain, and I would open the door and I'd sneak a peek to see if anybody was looking, and then I'd pull the curtain over and slip in real quick and hope the wind wasn't blowing, and I would take my shower. We finally have a shower in the bathtub inside now. Let's see, what else? He had an oleander tree in the front that was planted when the house was built, and it got so big and it had beautiful, beautiful pink flowers. But the pink flowers dropped all over the sidewalk, and some of the neighbors complained about having to sweep up the oleander. So he took out the pink oleander, which really broke my heart because it was so big then, and it just bloomed all summer long. And it was so gorgeous that you could just identify the house by our big pink oleander tree. But we also have a cute little red wooden woodpecker door knocker that was up when I was a little girl, and it's still there. Right next to the 309. So that's our address. So it's still the same, and everybody knows that house.
It's remarkable that you've preserved in such a strong way that it's a lot of them are getting remodeled, and so from a preservation side of things, it's incredible the amount of work to design it and retain its original construction. It's fascinating you brought these images and keep remarking how much it hasn't changed. You've preserved such a beautiful place filled with so many memories and new memories as these new generations come in. So it's remarkable what you're doing to maintain the integrity of that home.
Thank you. Thank
really
you. Well, we love it very, very much.
I was wondering how Balboa Island became a home to you. So you said you share you were born here, but how did that process take place for you personally?
When I got married and moved away from California, actually, the man I was married to had a business in Dallas, Texas, so I moved to Texas and lived there for 12 years, and didn't really like it very much because of the weather. When I came back to California, unfortunately getting a divorce, but the first thing I did was make up my mind to come back to Newport Beach to live, not to Pasadena or anyplace else, but to Newport. So I've lived here then since 1970, full time.
How much had it changed since you left Cuba?
Actually, in 1970, it hadn't changed all that much because there still were many more of the original homes available. But as time went on, more and more people, it became more desirable to live at the beach. With the addition of freeways in California, the transportation was easier to get around, so people could actually commute. They could work in Los Angeles and live at the beach. So more and more then, they were tearing down the smaller houses and building larger houses to house their families. And so it's very, very different now, very different now. I can remember even when I lived in Texas, we would always come back for vacations in the summertime. And one year we were renting a house over on Lido, and it was when they were building Fashion Island. And I was out on the upstairs terrace of that house, and I was looking up at the hills. And the hills were all just so romantic and so dark and so beautiful, and at night with the moonlight. And I looked up and I saw these lights that were in the parking lot of the shopping center, and it really broke my heart to see that, to just destroy the beautiful serenity of the hills. So those things happen, and now Fashion Island, I'm used to it, so I'm glad it's here. I can remember when Jamboree Road wasn't here, and of course y'all know that it's named Jamboree Road because of the Boy Scout Jamboree that was there. I can remember watching Promontory Point being built. In fact, I used to go to the council meeting to oppose it. I didn't want it built because on that bluff was where, when we went on a date, the boys would maybe take us up to the top of the bluff out before we came home to watch the submarine races, because that was a place to park.
So you looked at the bay in Catalina and, oh yeah.
For
Were
sure.
there roads there, Marcia? Was it roads or was it just?
Well, it was PCH was there.
So you just park off PCH and walk over there?
No, the
Park on
bluff, you
PCH?
could drive right onto the edge of the bluff. Right onto the edge. And they even had to move Bayside Drive. Bayside Drive, you know, where Bayside Lagoon is in there, it didn't used to be there. Because, let's see, they moved Bayside further inland. It was closer to the water, closer to the marina. And they wanted to have that little inlet with the lagoon coming in there so they could build more houses. And I can remember before Shark Island, Lido Island, no, pardon me, Linda Isle was built. It was called Shark Island, and there was nothing on Shark Island but just dirt. And Bay Island, when I was a little girl, I used to babysit people over there, and they were just cottages, beach cottages too, very modest, and now it's where the wealthiest people in the world own homes. Let's see, John Wayne's house was over in Bay Shores, but some of the other famous people and well-known people. Oh, Howard Amundsen had the house on the tip of Harbor Island that was just gorgeous, and it looked like it was in Hawaii, and it had a great expansive green lawn around it. It was just wonderful. I had a girlfriend who lived on Appolina. Her family was from Beverly Hills, and she came in the summertime too. And she owned a snowbird sailboat, like the Flight of the Snowbirds that they had. And I was lucky enough to be invited to go out with her almost every day. We'd pack a lunch, we'd take our comic books, and we'd get on her little sailboat, and we would just sail all over the bay, all over, wherever we wanted to go. And we wouldn't come home until it was almost dinner time. And it was just the most wonderful memories of, oh, and one of the times that we were over at Newport Harbor Yacht Club, I guess we stopped and needed to use the restroom or something, and we had just gotten out of the sailboat and tied it up, and a larger boat came in, and this young gal jumped out, a very beautiful young gal jumped out, and who was it but Lauren Bacall? It was Humphrey Bogart's yacht. And she just practically bumped into my friend Jenny. So there have been lots of fun episodes like that.
Would you share some more of those stories that you might have encountered with celebrities in the area?
Natalie Wood, and she was then married to Robert Wagner. They used to like to, I'm trying to remember the name of it. It was a donut shop right next to Boardman's Market. And they'd stand in line for donuts. And I was standing in line behind them one time. Oh, I should have made a note of these things. I'm sorry, I'm having a blank now. Shirley Temple did walk by once in front of our house when I was about 6 years old. And she was with her entourage, some adults and her people. And they got past the house and my mother said, oh Marcia, run after her, see if you can get her autograph and tell her you're wearing a Shirley Temple dress. Because I was. They had Shirley Temple dresses with the label on it. And so I did. I ran like a little girl and got her autograph. And she said, oh, that's nice. I'm glad you're wearing a Shirley Temple dress.
It is incredible.
Uh-huh.
It's an odd encounter to have so many memories with celebrities in the area. This is such a gathering place for Hollywood, and it's neat that your childhood experiences like this are part of these stories as well.
Well, they are, because in those days we didn't think it was anything. Sure, it was something special, but it wasn't the way it is now, where the paparazzi are after them, and they were very nice, ordinary people that just happened to be actors and famous as a result of it. But normally they were just average, real nice, friendly people, and we didn't bother them. Like when Natalie Wood and Robert Wagner were standing in line at the donut shop, nobody bothered them. We'd all kind of look, but we wouldn't make it obvious. So it was a desirable place then, as well as it is now, more and more all the time.
Would you share some of the special holiday memories that you've made here on the island?
Okay. Well, I told in the letter, the love letter I wrote, that we were here on December 7th, 1941. We were at the house on Pearl Harbor Day. And it was December, and it happened to be really nice weather. And so during the winter, if it was really nice, we would come down occasionally for a weekend or a day or two or whatever, and we just happened to be in the house that day. But that was, of course, a very, very sad day for America, and I was just a little girl, so not truly understanding. But they turned Collins Island, which in those days they called it Cagney Island because Jimmy Cagney had a house on it. Mr. Collins was the original developer. They turned it into a Coast Guard station, and so there were Coast Guard guards beside the bridge, and they just had a facility there. And they had other things. During the war, we all had to have blackout curtains on our windows. Mm-hmm. And the upper halves of the streetlights were all painted black.
Mm-hmm. Some of the streetlights still are black.
I was wondering, because for years they still were.
Mm-hmm.
They still were. And holidays, of course, I remember the boat parades. I can remember Marcasa was the church camp for the Pasadena Presbyterian Church on the South Bay front at Marine Avenue, and we belonged to that church, and so I really wanted to go to camp there. But my mother and dad really didn't want to spend the money to send me when I was already down here with my grandmother. But I begged and pleaded, please, everybody's staying at Marcasa, I need to go. And so I got to stay 1 week with my friends. And they were having a boat parade that summertime. It was the highest tide of the year in August. And so they were having the parade of lights, they called it then. And they just had a few decorated boats, that was all. But let's see, what else? What other holidays? I guess all the holidays now are a huge thing. Halloween, Christmas, oh my goodness, Balboa Island is known worldwide for all of that. And I think it's wonderful. I come to walk around the island 5 or 7 times during the holiday season just to see all the decorations and the friendliness of all the people. There's a lot of patriotism on the island, a lot of friendship, a lot of community spirit.
Do you share some of those memories with your neighbors? Is it mainly family gatherings?
Okay. Well, one of my nicest memories is some people next door to us were renting the house. And it was Mr. and Mrs. Herbert and their son Gavin and their daughter Marilyn. And Gavin was a year older than I, and Marilyn was a year younger than I. And there were lots of other kids on our age, on our block, approximately the same age. And so we kids all just used to pal around with each other. Nobody ever had dates or girlfriend or boyfriend or anything. We had the freedom of, because there wasn't crime in those days. So we had the freedom to go pretty much anywhere we wanted, and we'd all walk together down to the ferry and go across to the fun zone. And they had for a while, they had a really fast speedboat, a big speedboat that took on maybe 20 passengers, and it would go outside the jetty, and it would just go into the ocean, back and forth, going really fast with the spray coming in. It just was so romantic to look up at the stars. And one time, I got to sit next to Gavin, and he was really handsome. And I thought, oh boy, isn't this romantic? Well, it turns out that Gavin Herbert his dad ended up founding Allergan Pharmaceuticals, and then Gavin started Rogers Nursery. And so, and now Gavin lives in the Western White House. He lives in the home that was Richard Nixon's in San Clemente. And Gavin and his wife, who was from Monrovia High School, a girlfriend of mine, and so then he kept it, he himself was just a really nice regular guy and just kept it locally, like we're old friends, all of us old friends.
It's remarkable. Would you share some of the life-changing events that might have occurred here at the island?
Life-changing. Well, I can't really think of life-changing. Just that my children, when we left Texas, the children were, one child was born here in Los Angeles, but the other 2 were born in Texas, and so that was pretty much all they knew until we moved back here to California, except for vacations. And once they moved back here, they said, how in the world could you ever leave California? And we are so glad. I mean, that was life-changing for them. And they're all still here in California, and so glad for it, as my grandchildren are. They're all here in Corona Del Mar.
It's neat that you've all identified with this area and
Oh,
become
yes.
home to you.
Oh, very much so.
Would
Very
you
much.
consider yourself an islander by term? You
Oh, yes.
self-identify?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Even though I don't live here on the island, I regret that I don't, but just through circumstances, I live close. I live real close, and I come here all the time to shop. My favorite place is the Safeway Market right off. The drugstore is right there. That's where I go. It's closest for me. The Galley restaurant is still way, it was it was still there way back. And gosh, I can remember when there weren't any restaurants in Corona del Mar except the Five Crowns, which is now the Five Crowns, but it used to be the Hurley Bell. It was the Hurley Bell originally. And when they first built the very first, it became, it's now Ruby's Diner. Before that, it was Coco's, and before that, it was the, do you remember?
No.
Snack Shop.
Okay.
The Snack Shop.
Snack shop.
And it was people who owned a little restaurant here on the island built the Snack Shop on the corner of Dahlia and PCH, and that was the very first family-style restaurant that was affordable. The Five Crowns or Hurley Bell was a little expensive for families. But we always just would eat at home here or on the island and stay on the island. We didn't go off the island for much of anything. We liked it on the island.
Would you share some of the favorite businesses that you've had on Marine Avenue? Maybe a story about them, even if it doesn't exist today.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, Mrs. Holman, who owned Wee Jack and Jill in the 200 block of Marine. She had a children's store there for many years. Janice Allen's father owned the dime store in the middle block. Oh, there was a milk shop. There was a, oh yeah, now I can't remember the name of that. There was a coffee shop that I used to go sit at the counter and have cherry cokes and play the jukebox with my friend Jenny. And that was on the middle block. Then Jack Hanson had a place where he sold bathing suits, and Jack Hanson became somebody famous up in Beverly Hills. But he had girls model in the window on Friday nights. Yeah, on Friday nights. You didn't know that? And then outside the drugstore that was on the far corner across from the lighthouse, that was the drugstore on the corner, and there were benches on the outside, and the young fellows all sat on the benches and watched the cars go by and the pedestrians go by, and they called it Checkers Row. All the boys would sit there and check out all the girls. It's fun to remember some of those funny old things.
You shared how you were part of the fashion show for Wee Jack and Jill. Would you share a little bit of that memory?
Oh, all
You
right.
had a news clipping of appearing in that show.
Yes, Mrs. Holman had a fashion show over on the peninsula on Palm Street, the street where the pavilion is, and they put up a runway in the middle of the street. They closed down the traffic, and they had little children modeling the clothes from the shop. And my brother and I wore sailor outfits. I wore a little sailor dress, and he wore a little sailor suit. I think I was 5 and he was 3. So he was a cute little boy. He sure looked cute. I still am going to find I have a picture in my baby book of both of us that I have to locate. But let's see. Oh, yes, and when I got up to high school and even on in college, the merchants around town really took care of the local young people, and rather than have a summer job where I was sitting in an office in Los Angeles in town, I put a sign in somebody's window here, the store window, advertising swimming lessons in the morning and babysitting at night. And so I gave swimming lessons at Appalina in the North Bay. I taught swimming lessons. And then it was available for babysitting at night. And I made more money doing that than I would have staying in town with an office job. And I had more fun because I was through about 3 o'clock and I could still go to Little Corona and meet all my friends and catch the waves.
Wow. How was the community at that time? Did you know most of the people who lived here?
I knew everybody. We knew everybody on our block, and we knew a lot of other people too. A lot of them. but things changed, and then of course the fact that then I grew up and got married, and my life was taking me other places, and then I moved to Texas. So some of those people passed away, some of those people moved away, but the spirit on Appalachia Street has stayed. I think many of the owners of the houses on our block are descendants of the original owners. So our children are playing with or our grandchildren are playing with the grandchildren of kids that I knew growing up.
Remarkable.
And everybody seems to be real proud of that fact. And I think the other streets on the island are the same. Because I notice with the benches now that are donated by families at each street, the plaques are engraved with the family's name and a message from the families of spending many happy summers. So our block isn't the only one on the island. I'm sure that the whole island is the same way. If ever one comes here, they'll never want to leave.
So neat. As you walk through the streets and kind of remember all these different stages that you celebrate, what do you find to be consistent throughout all those years? What would you say has stayed the same, perhaps, with the island?
Oh, there's so many. Everything is familiar. The flowers, the gardens, the fences, the architecture, the configuration of the streets. Oh, I memorized the streets from the names of the streets from the time I was a little girl, and knew all the streets, the flower streets in Corona del Mar too, because they made it easier for us. They did them alphabetically. So it took me longer to memorize all the Balboa Island streets, but still. And my husband is amazed at me because I come down here and I know every shortcut to go anywhere through the alley and which way to go on the alley.
A local.
Yeah.
This is your playground.
It is.
Really, it's neat how that it's stayed the same in those elements.
Everything is the
throughout
same. Oh, sure, it's just all the same. When I walk from our house on Appalachia up here, it's just like I'm a little girl again, walking without shoes on, and the sidewalk is too hot. Just same.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
How about with your brother being here? How has that made the tie even stronger?
Because we both feel the same way about the house and our ancestors, and we just enjoy. We're so grateful that we were able to inherit the house. It's just so very, very special that we are lucky enough to have it, and my brother takes care of it, and he and I are lucky. We agree on everything, and we're very, very close. So it's a wonderful relationship.
You can see it even from its earliest development, the relationship you have as children. So it's neat that you've had that whole throughout the years and have this as a place to remember together. It's such a beautiful community, so it's remarkable. Were there any other memories you might want to share about perhaps your home street on Appalachia, or other memories throughout the years?
Well, I think I've covered pretty much. We used to have a block party on Labor Day, the end of the summer. We could, in those days, the police would let us close off the street, and we'd put tables in the middle of the street, and a potluck. Everybody on the block would bring dishes, and we would have music, and it would be very festive. And then it got to be too much of a problem for the police department to have to worry about the closure of streets. Other neighborhoods started doing the same thing, and it began getting a little bit out of hand. So they had to stop, unfortunately. But that was always a great way to even the renters, even the people who came and rented for the summer were always invited, because usually they were the same renters who would repeat year after year. So we just have it's a real community here, a real community. How long have you lived here, Tina?
27 years.
27?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you've been here
Not long enough.
Oh. I know how it is.
I would like to have grown up here.
That's why I'm very lucky. Well, actually, when I was 14, my grandmother had to have surgery. I'll back up a minute. What their routine was, my grandfather worked for the city of Pasadena as a civil engineer, and he was able to take his vacation days at a time. And so what he would do is he'd take Thursday off and Friday off, and then he could come down Wednesday night and not have to leave to go back up to Pasadena until Sunday night or Monday morning. So he had sort of mini vacations every weekend long, and it worked out really well. Well, when my grandmother I was 14, my grandmother needed surgery, and she needed somebody to stay with her all the time, and my grandfather wasn't going to be here, so I said, oh, I'll cook for you, I'll do the laundry, I'll do anything you want me to do. I was very close to my grandmother, and so I got to stay the whole summer that year, the whole summer, and so that made my year. So from that time on, I was just my grandmother's beck and call to whatever she wanted, whatever she needed. So I got to spend all the summer from then on, every summer. That's why when my first child took her first steps, she took her first steps toward that grandmother who loved her so much. In our house, in our living room.
Wow.
309.
Yeah, it's remarkable. Wow. Well, thank you so much for this rich history. You really have enlightened just so many areas of what it would have been like to live
Thank
there.
you for
So
inviting me.
we're
It's
very
been a
glad
pleasure.
to have you. That concludes our interview. Thank you.